I want you to just kind of think about your creative idea like a butterfly. And in order to like let the butterfly land, you have to be really still, right? You have to be still in order for that butterfly to land. Next time you have a creative idea, to be still, be still so that it can land. A lot of times, we get very attached to our creative ideas, right? We get very attached to this creative idea that we're pulling. We can all agree that we've had an experience where you have an idea and then somehow, some way, somebody else like makes it or, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then somebody else does it, right? Because we're actually just pulling these creative ideas from this energy of the universe, this consciousness. And so when we pull it and don't act on it, then it kind of floats back into the ethers and somebody else might grab it. And so there's a couple steps in the creative process in terms of grabbing that creative idea and then following the intuition and then not letting those filters filter it, right? And creating in a way that it really is the purest space that you can create from. So, number one, in terms of our creative ideas, is it is the purest form when you get it right away. And that's really important to keep in mind. Your creative idea is the most pure at the second you download it. At the second you have that idea and you're like, oh, it would be really, right? That is the most pure form of that creative idea because you just pulled it from the universe, right? It hasn't gone through these filters yet. Just like a baby, just like a little kid, right? They're at their purest form. They're not self-conscious and they're not worried about this and they do silly dances and they're so happy and whatever because they haven't gone through these filters that we have gone through life, right? So, in terms of these beautiful creative ideas, when we have these creative ideas, our best action is to capture it somehow. I want you to just kind of think about your creative idea like a butterfly, and it's like flying all around. And we know in order to like let the butterfly land, you have to be really still, right? You have to be still in order for that butterfly to land. So I would encourage you next time you have a creative idea to be still. Be still so that it can land. We'll have a creative idea, but we'll filter it through these filters. And unfortunately, sometimes it will go down the pipeline so fast that it gets filtered through those filters before you catch it, right? And then the butterfly flies away. So the first step is to be still, being still when you're having a creative idea. The second step I would say is to, you got to be unfiltered with your creative idea. So being very detached from what that idea is very important because remember, it's not your creative idea. It's a beautiful blessing from the universe that's coming through you. So being still is the first thing. The second thing is just listening, following that intuition. I'll write down creative ideas or follow creative impulses that I have no interest in. I don't really think it's a great idea. But it's not my job to decipher that. It's my job to capture it and put it out in an unfiltered way. And so when we're talking about capturing it, it's that being still, right? Maybe being still means taking a walk. Maybe being still means meditation. Like whatever being still for you means, then that's what you need to do. And when I say be still to catch that creative thought, the stillness is in your mind. The stillness starts in your mind. It's Not like, okay, let me sit still for 5 minutes, right? Because you have a little kid who's like, do, 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 do. That's your creative thoughts, right? Acting like in timeout, but they're all like crazy, right? So you have to really quiet your mind when those creative thoughts are coming to you. When we're having these creative thoughts, right? We're being still. We're letting the butterfly land instead of capturing it, instead of attaching to it, right? It's very easy to catch a butterfly and then you kill it because you reached out and grabbed it. Okay. If you can be still and you can let it land, now it's free to be whatever color and shape and flight and land and leave when it's ready and stay when it's ready. All of that is really important. So, the third thing is that it takes practice. It takes practice every time. You're probably downloading creative ideas all the time, every single day. I bet you're a lot more creative than you maybe think. And it's just a matter of, is it going through too many filters? And are you creating a space for yourself? You know what I'm saying? So being still, detaching, and practicing it. Okay. We're having creative ideas every day. What a massive blessing that is. What are those limiting beliefs that we're running into when we're getting creativity? Are we saying, "Oh, I'm not that creative," because we have a limiting belief, because we have a fear of rejection, because we have a certain thing? You know, everybody in the world is creative. You come from creativity. So you by logical, you know, assumption, you are creative because you come from creativity. So you must be creative. So everybody in this world is creative. People who build things, they might not call themselves creative. They're making something out of nothing. That's very creative. People who build a business don't really consider themselves, oh, well, I'm not a creative. I have a business. You're very creative, right? So even like in terms of being a music teacher, putting together a lesson plan, putting together information in a way that a student can receive it, that is creative. And so our first way of receiving these creative ideas is to know that you are a conduit for creativity, right? We have to know that these creative ideas are available to us for us to receive because that's who we are and that's what we come from. And so before any of those steps, step zero is to say, I am creative and really know that and really believe that. And I love when I work with a client who starts with me and says like, oh, whatever. And then by the end, they're like, whoa, I'm really creative because we all have it. And it's really a muscle. Your creativity is a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. That's the only thing, right? Yes, what the mind can conceive, the body can, I'm assuming it says achieve. Yes, I had to click on it. But totally, totally. If you believe that you're a creative person, there you go. It's in you, right? And so imagine like every moment that's unfolding is technically a creative moment, right? Is technically because why? We're creating our life. Our life. We are creating our life step by step by step. And so every second of every day is a creative moment because we get to choose. We always get to choose. So why not choose your most creative self? And your most creative self says, ooh, what can I create in this moment? Right? Like, let's go beyond our creative projects for a second and say, what can I create in the next moment? Because that's your creative spirit. Um, is that making sense? Yes. Good. So it's important with these filters that we all have. It's really letting yourself off the hook, right? Like those filters that your creativity has to go through, half of them you came in here. Like, sorry, you came into this space with it, right? Mom, dad, environment, genes, all of that is part of it. So the first half of it is letting yourself off the hook. Is like, okay, I got a lot of, I got a lot of shit in here. I'm like not a fan of some of these, but it's not my fault. Okay. detaching from that, detaching from feeling so bad that you're judging yourself or you feel shameful or you feel like you're not good enough at this creativity or whatever. Boom, start there. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to applaud myself for recognizing these things that are having to be filtered. That's really the first step is being able to quiet your mind. And when you quiet your mind, and then you receive a creative thought without judgment, without attachment, without like desire or want attached to this has to be like this. You're really in the flow of real, true creative magic. Like that's really where true creativity comes from. And as creatives, which we all are, sometimes we run into a space where there is, well, I don't do this. Well, I'm not good at this. Well, I only create this. Well, no, you are a creative being. You are a creative spirit. So it's allowing those ideas that say, I feel like writing a book, but I'm not a writer. Well, yes, you are. If you're receiving a book, if you're receiving a YouTube idea or a podcast idea or whatever it is, receive that. And then when you really practice that, you're going to get to a space where it doesn't matter if anybody else thinks anything else. Well, you're not of this. Well, I don't think you're, well, the only opinion that matters is this one, is the one that you hear, is the one that you feel. That creativity, that is the most important thing that you can do and listen to. And I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Listening to your inner self, your inner spirit, your inner creativity, right? Your inner creative voice is the most important voice that you can listen to. Remember that because, especially when we have creative ideas, there's a lot of chatter out here about, oh, you're going to try to make an album. Oh, you're going to try to do this. Oh, you're going to try to do that. Shh. Shh. If it's not the voice of your inner spirit, then you can take it with a grain of salt, right? And of course, we want to listen to people who can help advise us, people who can help direct us, people who can help give us, the tools to get from the idea to the manifestation of it. But it's the second thing you're listening to, right? You're listening to it after you're listening to your inner spirit, your inner voice. Because then you could say, okay, you know what? Interesting. But because you're detached, because you're not judging yourself or you're feeling shame or you're feeling guilt, then you can take that person's advice or opinion and you can filter their thought and opinion down to the concentrated, is this really in line with what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling? Because if it is, we're on track. If it's not, then I wish them well, but I don't have to take that. I don't have to receive that. I don't have to latch on to that. You can do this. You can't do this. You should do this. Try this. Like, bleh, okay. It gets to be a lot, right? Everybody wants to share what they're thinking, but especially in this space, it is so important for us to really get to a place where we say, I'm listening to my inner self first. That is the intention of this space because your creativity will be so much more pure. It will go through less of those things, right? It's not going to have to go through this drip filter where you get it and it's a pebble, It's like this asteroid coming out of the sky and it all the way down to this little tiny pebble. We want to make sure we're getting all of the creative idea, all of that. And it's that being still. It's that being still. And I would encourage you to visualize that butterfly when you're having that creative idea. Visualize that butterfly. Because if you can imagine your creative idea as a butterfly flying around you, you're going to be more still. And you're going to call your attention to the butterfly, right? Like if you've ever tried to catch a butterfly before, you are not focused on anything else except like, how do I okay, shh, don't move. Nobody talk to me. Right, exactly. You're just focused on the butterfly. and being so still that it might land in your hand, right? This call specifically is so special and so important for you to get to the place where you're like, yes, I am in a place where I'm ready to work with brands, work with businesses, because I know the value of the creative projects that I'm creating because they're so pure and they're so good and they're straight from the universe, and the world needs that. That's the space you need to be in when you're creating. The world needs this creative project. It was sent to me, right? Doesn't that feel so much better than like, I hope people like it, you know? Right. It's like, oh, well, I hope people, fuck that. Who fucking cares if they like it? The universe gave it to you. That's more powerful than anything could be. Anything could be. Nobody's opinion, nobody liking it. How many great, amazing artists do we know? Mozart and Bach and Beethoven and Picasso and incredible, brilliant creative people who were not even appreciated until way after they were here physically. It's it it's so important for us to be close to our creative spirit. And close to our creative spirit, your inner being, your soul, your spirit is your creative spirit. That self of you, that creative part of you, that part of you that gives you the impulse to say, I'm out of here. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to go do a podcast and I'm going to do this because life is too short for us to not create our most magical things. And sometimes that means creating when you're done with work. Sometimes that means finding out how to make your creativity your work so you can do both, right? You are expanding the universe with every creative idea. Every creative idea that you have and you don't act on, and every single creative idea that you have and you do act on, every single one expands the universe. And that is so important for you to know and understand and take a moment and just kind of salivate on that. Maybe we'll take our creative ideas more seriously if we understand the weight of it, the weight of the fact that we've been giving something from the universe to bring into physical form. Whatever you're creating, I want you to really think about that when you get a creative idea. If it's a social media post, if it's a podcast episode, if it's music that you're doing, whatever you're creating, think about how the weight of that, and not weight in a bad way, the weight of the responsibility of, wow, the universe trusted me with this gift to bring into the world. And if you get that creative idea and you can't act on it, you don't have to feel guilty because the universe will boop just give it to somebody else. So there's no guilt in it, there's no shame in it, but what a blessing. What a real privilege for us to get a creative idea, for us to get any kind of impulse, right? It's so easy for us to be like, wow, I have this brilliant creative idea, and then kind of talk yourself out of it, right? And a lot of times that's because at some point in life, somebody has talked us out of a creative idea. Whether that's a 5-year-old, we're a 6-year-old, right? We all have some kind of probably locked core memory, right? We're not here for the end goal of it. When you finish that album, that meal, that business, that podcast, you're going to have another idea because that's what your nature is. Until the very day that you die, you're going to have creative ideas, which again, what a blessing. How many can we act on? You know, let's start to play a game with ourselves. How many creative ideas can I act on? And the more you quiet those voices of people saying, no, you can't, it'll be too hard, that's a silly idea, it's a waste of money, la, 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 all the millions of things that we've heard, the more you can put those in a box where they belong and say, I'm going to pay attention to the ones that really serve the purpose of what I'm creating after I listen to my inner spirit and my inner voice, the more those will be easier and easier. They won't affect you as much, right? Well, you look like this. Yes, the more you can thrive. Totally. 100%. 100%. And the more not only you, us, ego, baby self can thrive, but our spirit, our creative spirit can thrive. Like our souls are here to create. Literally, think about that. Otherwise, we don't come. We don't come into this body that's just our vehicle while we're on Earth, right? We just stay in this nebulous cloud of joy and love and light, and we just like hang out up here. We want to come to Earth into this human experience because we get to taste, we get to see, and we get to feel, and we get to touch. We get to do all of those things, those sensory things. So put that into your creative context. When you're eating, when you're making a meal, like let's say we're talking about creativity in terms of cooking, in terms of a meal, being fully present to that creative experience. Oh, I'm going to put this in it. And oh, how much better are your meals going to be if you can just tap into that, right? Oh, let me try this. Oh, let me try this. Oh, this is fun. The taste of it, the smell of it, the feel of it, enjoying that. Same thing with your album, same thing with your podcast, same thing with everything that you're creating. It's really about the process, that process of being still, of letting the butterfly land, and then just enjoying that moment where the butterfly is in your hand. Wow, how magical is that, right? If you've ever had a butterfly land on you, you like just don't want to move. Don't move. Nobody move. And see how long it sits there, right? That's what our purpose is. That's what our mission is. We are all here divinely. We are pulling creative ideas from somewhere, right? And we're interpreting them, not always in a thought, in a feeling, in, you know, it's not always like, do this, start a business, it's an impulse, it's intuition, listening and being still and letting that butterfly land. And you don't have to tell anybody about the butterfly, right? You don't have to tell anybody else about it if you don't want to. If you want to, you can. Know that there is, that when I'm sharing this, I'm listening to this first. Prepare yourself like that and then share it with whoever you please. But just create that space for yourself. The magnitude of these creative thoughts and ideas that we are receiving. They really are so special. There's no guilt, there's no shame because the butterfly will fly off and go and sit on somebody else, and that's okay. But what a blessing to receive that and understand how special that is and understand how valuable that is. And I hope you'll think about that the next time that you do have a creative idea. And again, remember your creative ideas are not, I'm going to make a podcast, I'm going to make an album, I'm going to make choreography. Your creative ideas are you're going from one step to the other. You're going from here to here. What's the most creative way I can do that? What's the most present and joyful and wonderful way I can do that? Because that's creativity. That is creativity.